Signs of a chosen one, exploring spiritual markings on the hand. My beloved child, before you move even 1 second forward, pause right here. What I'm about to say isn't ordinary motivation, and it isn't superstition either. It's the kind of realization that sneaks up on you late at night, when you stare at your own hands and feel like they've been quietly carrying a story you were never taught to read. People scroll past things like this every day, assuming it's just another dramatic idea, another overused theme. But this is different. Because hands are not just tools. They are maps. They record pressure, repetition, struggle, restraint, and intention. Long before you ever learned how to explain yourself to the world, your hands were already responding to it. And here's the unsettling part. Most people never question why certain lines deepen, why certain markings appear more defined on some individuals and almost invisible on others. If you've ever felt like life pushed you harder, trained you earlier, or isolated you without explanation, then don't skip this moment. Stay till the end, because something huge is waiting for you, and it begins with understanding why your hands may look the way they do. This isn't about predicting the future. It's about recognizing patterns that reflect how you've been shaped, pressured, and prepared. Look closely, not with obsession, but with awareness. There are people who glide through life untouched, and then there are people whose palms seem carved by experience itself. Strong vertical lines that don't fade easily. Crossings that look deliberate rather than random. Depth where others have smoothness. These are not signs of luck or fate. They are signs of intensity. Of repetition. Of carrying weight internally while appearing calm externally. Think about it, how many times have you been the one who noticed things early, felt things deeply, or sensed shifts before they happened? How often were you the observer in the room, the silent absorber, the one who didn't speak first but understood first? When pressure becomes routine, the body adapts. When responsibility arrives early, the nervous system matures differently. Over time, the hands reflect this conditioning. Not because you were chosen by some force, but because you endured what most people never had to. And endurance leaves marks. Subtle ones. Personal ones. The shocking part isn't that these markings exist, it's that no one ever tells you what they really represent. They are reminders of how often you stood still while chaos moved around you. How many times you restrained reactions. How frequently you chose discipline over comfort. This is why the connection between the title and this message matters. These signs are not magical. They are psychological footprints, etched through consistency, stress, focus, and control. Now listen carefully, because this is where people either dismiss the idea or finally understand it. Being a chosen one doesn't mean being special in the way movies portray it. It means being selected by circumstance to develop strength without applause. It means your growth was accelerated, not celebrated. Those markings on the hand aren't promises, they're receipts. Proof of what you've already survived. Proof of how many times you adapted silently. And if this is resonating uncomfortably deep, that's not coincidence. That's recognition. Most people avoid this realization because it demands responsibility. Once you see yourself clearly, you can't go back to pretending you're ordinary. But don't misunderstand, this isn't about ego. It's about awareness. Awareness of why you feel different. Why comfort rarely satisfies you. Why your mind is always preparing for the next level, even when your life looks stable. Stay till the end of this journey, because as we move forward, you'll start seeing these signs not as mysteries, but as evidence. Evidence that you were built through pressure, refined through restraint, and shaped for something that requires depth, not noise. Something huge is waiting for you, not outside, but within the understanding you're just beginning to unlock. There's a reason this moment feels different, and it's not because of curiosity alone. It's because once you start noticing patterns, you can't unsee them. And right now, your attention is being tested. Most people would already drift away, thinking they've heard enough. But the ones who stay, they're always the ones who sense that the real meaning is layered deeper. Here's the truth people rarely confront. Not everyone reacts to pressure the same way. Some break, some avoid, and some adapt so completely that pressure becomes their default state. When that happens, the body memorizes it. Not in obvious ways, but in subtle signals. Hands become firmer. Lines gain clarity. Movements become deliberate. You don't fidget the same way others do. You don't rush without purpose. Even silence feels natural to you. And if you've ever wondered why strangers sometimes trust you without knowing why, or why people sense strength in you even when you say very little, this is part of the explanation. Don't skip this, because what comes next connects everything you've experienced so far. Stay till the end. Something huge is waiting for you, and it's not what most people expect. Here's the shocking realization most never hear: these signs don't appear because life was kind to you. They appear because life expected more from you. Think back carefully. Were you forced to mature early? Did responsibility arrive before you were ready, yet somehow you handled it anyway? Did you learn self-control not from books, but from necessity? Every time you held back when others exploded. Every time you observed instead of reacting. Every time you chose patience over impulse. That repetition trains the nervous system, sharpens awareness, and yes, it leaves impressions. Not mystical ones. Psychological ones. Your hands learned steadiness because your life demanded it. Your grip became firm because uncertainty was common. Your lines deepened because you didn't get the luxury of drifting aimlessly. This is why the idea of a chosen one feels so personal to some people and completely meaningless to others. It's not about being better. It's about being conditioned differently. And here's the once-in-a-lifetime insight most people miss. Those who carry these signs often underestimate themselves. They assume everyone feels this level of intensity. They assume everyone thinks this deeply. They don't realize how rare it actually is. If this message is hitting close to home, do yourself a favor, share this with someone who needs clarity, not motivation. And if this perspective resonates, subscribing isn't about numbers, it's about staying connected to ideas that sharpen awareness instead of dulling it. Now lean in, because this final layer is what separates curiosity from understanding. These signs are not telling you who you will become, they're reminding you of who you already are beneath the noise. Someone who doesn't need chaos to feel alive. Someone who doesn't crave attention to feel validated. Someone who knows, instinctively, that long-term growth matters more than short-term comfort. That's why boredom scares you more than effort. That's why stillness feels powerful, not empty. And that's why you're drawn to ideas that promise depth instead of distraction. Most people will never pause long enough to recognize this in themselves. They'll scroll, laugh it off, or dismiss it as coincidence. But you didn't. You stayed. And staying is the pattern. Stay till the end of this entire journey, because as the story continues, these signs will stop feeling abstract and start feeling undeniable. Something huge is waiting for you, not as a reward, not as a miracle, but as a realization that once it settles in, quietly changes how you see yourself forever. There's a moment when understanding stops feeling comfortable, and this is that moment. Because once you recognize the pattern, it starts connecting dots you never meant to connect. Think about it. The people who carry this quiet intensity often live with a strange contradiction. On the outside, they appear calm, controlled, even unbothered. On the inside, their awareness never switches off. They notice tone shifts. They sense motives. They read rooms before conversations even begin. This isn't paranoia. It's trained perception. And here's the unsettling truth most never hear: this level of perception doesn't develop in ease. It develops when your environment teaches you to stay alert without panicking. When mistakes were costly. When you learned, early on, that awareness was safer than ignorance. Over time, this awareness settles into your posture, your movements, your hands. You don't just react, you anticipate. And anticipation leaves traces. If you've ever felt like you're always one step ahead mentally, yet rarely acknowledged for it, don't skip this realization. Stay till the end, because something huge is waiting for you in what this awareness actually means for your future. Now let's talk about why these signs feel invisible to others but loud to you. People who live on the surface never understand depth, because depth requires stillness. You've probably noticed this, how silence doesn't scare you, but noise exhausts you. How meaningless conversations drain you, yet a single meaningful idea can keep your mind engaged for hours. This isn't preference. It's alignment. Your system is wired for focus, not distraction. And that wiring didn't happen randomly. It was built through moments where you had to rely on yourself. Moments where guidance was absent. Moments where you had to figure things out internally, without reassurance. Each time you did that, your internal compass strengthened. Each time you chose restraint over impulse, control over chaos, clarity over comfort, that conditioning deepened. The shocking part. Most people never reach this stage because life never forced them to. They float. They drift. They adapt only when it's convenient. But you adapted when it was necessary. That's why these signs don't scream for attention. They whisper recognition. They resonate only with those who have lived it. And if this feels uncomfortably accurate, that's not coincidence. That's alignment between experience and awareness finally meeting. Here's where everything tightens together, and this is the part most people aren't ready to hear. These signs are not asking you to feel special, they're asking you to be responsible. Responsibility for your focus. Responsibility for your growth. Responsibility for what you do with this level of awareness. Because awareness without direction becomes overthinking. Awareness without discipline becomes anxiety. But awareness with intention becomes power. Quiet power. The kind that doesn't announce itself but changes outcomes. This is why your journey has always felt internal first, external second. Why validation never fully satisfied you. Why you've always felt like something was building beneath the surface, even when nothing around you seemed dramatic. Stay till the end of this story, because the next layer will challenge how you see your role moving forward. Something huge is waiting for you, not in your hands, not in the lines, not in the markings, but in what you choose to do now that you finally understand what shaped them. There's a quiet shift that happens when awareness turns into certainty, and this is that shift. You're no longer just listening, you're recognizing yourself between the lines. And here's why this moment matters more than anything before it. People with this depth often pause right before their breakthrough, not because they're weak, but because they finally see how much responsibility clarity carries. You've probably felt it, the urge to pull back, to stay silent, to observe instead of stepping forward. That instinct protected you once. But now, it's testing you. Because once you understand why you were shaped this way, you're no longer allowed to waste it. The markings, the patterns, the quiet discipline they represent were never meant to impress anyone. They were meant to prepare you. Prepared people don't rush. They don't announce. They don't need approval. They move when timing aligns with intention. And if you've stayed this far, don't skip now. Stay till the end, because something huge is waiting for you right at the edge of this realization. Here's the revelation that separates observers from leaders, and most people never reach it. Awareness alone is not the gift. Direction is. Without direction, depth becomes isolation. Without direction, intelligence becomes frustration. But when someone with your level of perception chooses a path and commits fully, outcomes change. Not loudly. Not instantly. But inevitably. You start noticing it in subtle ways first. How distractions lose their grip on you, how patience replaces urgency, how your decisions feel heavier yet calmer. This is where your journey stops being internal only. This is where influence begins, even if you never seek attention. People will watch how you move. They'll feel your steadiness before they understand it. And that's why this message matters beyond you. If this insight resonates, share it with someone who feels misunderstood rather than unmotivated. Leave a comment, not for validation, but to anchor the realization in your own mind. And if you want to stay connected to ideas that sharpen you instead of numbing you, subscribing is a decision aligned with growth, not habit. Now listen closely, because this final truth doesn't repeat itself often. Being shaped by pressure doesn't guarantee success. It guarantees readiness. What you do with that readiness is where destiny quietly forms, not through luck, not through shortcuts, but through consistent, intentional action. The reason you've always felt different isn't because you were meant to stand above others. It's because you were meant to stand firm when others collapse under uncertainty. You don't need to prove this to anyone. You just need to honor it in how you move forward. Stay till the end of this understanding, because once it settles, you'll stop searching for signs on your hands and start recognizing them in your choices. Something huge is waiting for you, not as a dramatic moment, not as applause, but as a calm certainty that you were never lost, you were being trained. This is the moment most people never reach, not because it's hidden, but because it demands honesty. Honesty about how far you've already come without recognition. Honesty about how often you carried weight quietly while others searched for comfort loudly. By now, you should feel it clearly, this isn't about hands anymore. It never truly was. The markings, the lines, the firmness, the control, they were only mirrors. Mirrors showing how long you've been training without realizing it. And here's the uncomfortable truth, people like you are rarely celebrated at the beginning. You are noticed later. Much later. Because your strength isn't flashy. It's stable. You don't move fast to be seen. You move correctly to endure. That's why impatience never suited you. That's why shortcuts always felt hollow. And that's why, even now, you feel like you're standing at the edge of something meaningful, even if nothing dramatic has happened yet. Don't skip this feeling. Stay till the end, because something huge is waiting for you in understanding why this slow, silent build was necessary. Think about this carefully. Have you ever wondered why chaos sharpens you instead of breaking you? Why uncertainty makes you more focused rather than more afraid? That reaction isn't common. It's conditioned. Somewhere along the way, you learned that clarity comes from stillness, not noise. That power grows from consistency, not intensity. While others needed motivation to move, you needed purpose to commit. And commitment has always been your strength, even when you doubted yourself. This is why you're drawn to depth over distraction. Why you don't relate to surface-level excitement. Why your mind is always measuring long-term impact instead of short-term relief. The shocking realization is this. Most people never reach this internal alignment. They stay divided, wanting growth but fearing responsibility. You crossed that line quietly. You accepted responsibility early, even when no one asked you to. And that acceptance shaped everything, your discipline, your awareness, your restraint. This is why, when pressure increases, you don't panic. You recalibrate. You slow down. You choose wisely. That ability isn't learned overnight. It's earned over years of internal work no one applauded. Now let this settle, because this final layer ties everything together. Being shaped like this doesn't mean life will be easy from here. It means you'll be ready when it matters. When others hesitate, you'll move. When others react, you'll respond. When others look for permission, you'll rely on clarity. That's the quiet advantage no one warns you about. And once you recognize it, you stop searching for validation in signs, symbols, or external approval. You start trusting the internal compass that's been refined through experience. This is where your story shifts from observation to execution. From awareness to action. Stay till the end of this realization, because once it fully lands, you'll understand something most people never do. You weren't delayed, you were being prepared. Something huge is waiting for you, not as a sudden event, not as a loud breakthrough, but as a steady rise that, once it begins, doesn't stop. There comes a point where silence stops being a refuge and starts becoming a signal. A signal that it's time to move differently, not louder, not faster, but with intent. If you've reached this far, understand something important: you're not here by accident. People who don't sense depth would have left long ago. They would have dismissed this as coincidence, psychology, or imagination. But you stayed because something inside you recognizes truth before it's proven. That's the same instinct that has guided you through moments where logic alone wasn't enough. You've always known when to wait and when to act, even if you couldn't explain why. This is why you've never fully trusted noise, hype, or external approval. You trust patterns. You trust consistency. You trust what repeats quietly over time. And that's exactly what brought you here. Don't skip now. Stay till the end, because something huge is waiting for you in the way this awareness reshapes how you move forward. Here's the realization that changes everything once it settles in. People like you don't need constant motivation because you operate on internal standards. You don't need someone watching to stay disciplined. You don't need praise to remain consistent. Your drive comes from alignment, not emotion. That's why emotional highs never controlled you the way they control others. You've always been steady, even when life wasn't. And here's the surprising part: this steadiness is rare. Most people confuse intensity with strength. They burn bright, then burn out. You learned how to preserve energy, how to pace yourself, how to build quietly. That's why setbacks didn't destroy you. They refined you. Each pause taught you patience. Each delay sharpened your focus. Each unanswered question trained you to rely on yourself. And over time, this created a kind of calm authority, not over others, but over your own actions. That's the real marking people never talk about. The ability to remain composed when outcomes are uncertain. The ability to move without rushing. The ability to commit without announcing. This isn't talent. It's conditioning. And once you recognize it, you stop doubting your path, even when it looks slow from the outside. Now listen carefully, because this is where your story shifts from understanding to embodiment. You don't need to search for proof anymore. You are the proof. In how you think. In how you respond. In how you choose long-term growth over short-term relief. The world will never hand you a moment that says, "Now you're ready." Readiness reveals itself only when responsibility arrives, and you've been preparing for it longer than you realize. Stay till the end of this realization, because once it settles fully, you'll stop asking why you were shaped this way. You'll start using it. Calmly. Consistently. Intentionally. Something huge is waiting for you, not as a sudden reward, but as a quiet moment where everything finally aligns, and you move forward without hesitation.